And now, what's the haps with Mr. Keelan? This week's topic is the First Amendment. Welcome to a first of
a series of movies discussing the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and the beginning of the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment we're going to see is the foundation of our American democracy and republic, or democratic republic, I should say, where we the people are the boss. Without the rights of the First Amendment, we're not in charge. So let's get into it. The objectives of this lesson are going to be, first, to be able to identify the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment, which really is 5 and a half. Freedom of religion has 2 parts. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, I want you to be able to explain the role of civil liberties and free expression in a democratic society such as ours. And lastly, you need to be able to explain why it is important to protect unpopular forms of expression, including those who you disagree with. But first, if we're going to talk about the First Amendment, then we're going to need to be able to know what the First Amendment is. First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Wow, that's a mouthful, huh? Well, let's look at this in smaller portions. The first part deals with the freedom of religion. The freedom of religion has 2 parts. 1, the government can't establish or choose your religion for you. And number 2, the government can't stop you from freely exercising or carrying out your religious beliefs. It's not the government's business where or how you decide to pray, or if you do at all. You have the freedom of religion. Next is the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech comes in many forms. You can dance, sing, paint, speak, rap. All these are forms of speech. Even how you dress is a form of speech. You have the right to use your speech to express what's going on in your mind, and especially to those in power. If you're going to be speaking to power, you should know what the heck you're talking about. So we have the freedom of the press so that we, the people, can be informed. The press, in all of its many different forms, has the right to search, find, and publish information about our government, what it's doing, and what it thinks that we should know about. If you're upset about something, you have the freedom to assemble and bring people together to try to put pressure on those in power to change that which you're upset about. Sometimes called the freedom of protest. This allows us to show that there is massive public support for an idea or for a need for change. Similarly, you have the right to petition your government. If you have a grievance, if you have something wrong, if there's a complaint that you have a right to petition the government. Sign your name to a paper and get as many people to sign your name to it as well to show that there's broad public support to put pressure to bring change. Next, we're going to look at why the First Amendment exists. And now to the question I'm sure you're all wondering. Why do we have a First Amendment anyway? Well, that's a great question. First, our founders put together the Bill of Rights, especially the First Amendment, in order to protect rights which the British threatened. The British threatened their religious freedom, which is why many of them moved here. The British threatened their rights of free expression, threatening, for example, to hang anyone who was in dissent or disagreed with them. The right to free assembly was often threatened. Just ask the people at the Boston Massacre. Oh no, wait, you can't. They're dead. Newspapers that disagreed with the British were shut down. Time and time again, the British threatened the American rights. They wanted to create a government in which their rights were protected. which leads us to our second topic. We want to make sure that we have something in law that tells the government that there are certain things that it must keep its hands off. There are certain things that are just not your business, government. That includes our religion, our thoughts, our ideas, our rights to express ourselves. The government doesn't have a right to infringe on these things. The Bill of Rights guarantees protection of these things. Moreover, it makes sure that it is the government's job to protect our civil rights. Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence argued that government comes from the consent of the governed, and that the main job of a government is to protect the people's rights. We want to make sure the government we created protected our rights. Also, we need a government and some set of laws to make sure that we can find balance when our rights collide. For example, a student that wears an offensive t-shirt, are they in the right to freely express themselves, or is the school in the right to keep a safe environment? Which right is more important? That's why we need courts to try to settle these disputes. Once again, First Amendment, finding balance when our rights collide. Lastly, for right now, our civil liberties, free expression, our free speech, our freedom of religion, our freedom to assemble, these are all the foundation of self-government. In order to be the boss, as we've described, in order for we, the people, to be in charge, we need to be able to speak our mind to the government. We need to make sure the government can't use its power to infringe on a very powerful thing like religion. We know that we need to be able to speak our mind and assemble together to let the people who we elect in power know if we're happy or unhappy about their job that they're doing. In order to have a free society, we need to have free expression. The two go hand in hand. Well, let's talk about that a bit more. That leads us to your first question. In your notes, in your packets, take the time right now to write out your thoughts on why do you think it's essential for a society with self-government, with a democracy, to give protection to civil liberties. Right now, pause the movie, and when you're finished, unpause it so you may continue your exploration of the First Amendment. Now that you've finished, let's talk about some of the other reasons why we need the First Amendment. One argument is that free expression and the protection of civil liberties expand the marketplace of ideas. This idea means that we, the people, can go and choose what are the best, strongest ideas that through public discourse, through public debate, through the free flow of ideas, we can come to better solutions. We can come to a greater grasp of the truth. This allows us to progress as a society. This allows us to develop new innovations and better ways of doing things. Every great idea comes from having debate, comes from being challenged. This marketplace from ideas allows us to have the best, brightest, and strongest ideas come to fruition. Lastly, a Bill of Rights guarantees the rights of all people, including and especially those who hold unpopular points of view. As I'm always quick to point out, what's popular isn't always right, and what's right isn't always popular. Our founders realized in a democracy that there could be the potential for something called the tyranny of the majority, that 51% could really overrule 49% and really infringe upon their rights. We want to guarantee the rights of all people in our society, including and especially those who are in the minority. This means that our First Amendment protections, free speech protections, freedom to assemble, all these freedoms come along for all those of people who maybe the majority of people feel are wrong, disgusting, hateful, prejudiced. We have a responsibility to protect each other's rights. So we're going to be coming and talking about this a bit more when we get into our section on freedom of speech and free expression. But I want to ask you right now, in your notebooks, think about this and write on it. Why should you worry about protecting the rights of free expression, the right of free speech, for someone you disagree with, for someone who you're offended by, for someone who you feel is wrong, bigoted, distasteful? Why should you worry about protecting their rights? Or should you worry at all? You're more than entitled to take a dissenting opinion. So think on this for a bit and write. This will conclude our video once you're done writing on the why of the First Amendment. The next video will be on the freedom of religion. I look forward to talking more with you then.